4 o'clock and we're still trying to figure out who got elected. For the first time since they started to count the votes in Colorado's District 3 race, Lauren Boebert is now in the lead in what has become one of the most closely watched races in the country. The controversial Republican leading her Democratic challenger, Adam Frisch, by 794 votes at the moment.
This race has been unexpectedly close, still too close to call. Most thought that Boebert would win easily in a district that does favor Republicans. When we know a clear result, that's kind of unclear. But it could be a while because several counties, including Pueblo, are still counting ballots. And then they have to go through the ballot curing process. That's when they go over the ballots that may have been rejected due to signature verification problems. Frisch's campaign says they're waiting to see that every vote is counted. Boebert simply tweeted today the word winning. We're going to have more on the race from the Western Slope coming up on 9 News at 5. District 3, not the only close congressional district in a tight race. District 8, still close between Republican Barb Kirkmeyer and Democrat Yadira Caraveo.
Yeah, it's over, except it isn't quite yet. 92% of the votes have counted. Now, the Colorado Secretary of State's office has Caraveo up by a little over 1,100 votes. Now, the AP has not called the race. Kirkmeyer, though, has conceded to Caraveo. And today, Caraveo talked to the media outside of her parents' home in Adams County, and she was introduced by Democratic Congressman Jason Crow. He called her Congresswoman-elect. She reflected on being the first Latina woman elected to Congress from Colorado and what that distinction means to her.
The moment that I realized that I could be the first Latina congresswoman in Colorado was honestly some sadness at the fact that in the state that's named in Spanish, that we had never had somebody who looked like me or who spoke like me represent our interests in Congress. And so, yes, it added a level of pressure that sadly I'm used to as being a trailblazer for our community in so many different other endeavors. And so I think that made this win all the sweeter.
Caraveo also said that due to her background as a doctor, health care will always be a top priority for her when she goes to Congress.
The two kids accused of starting a fire that killed a mother and daughter in Lakewood are now facing dozens of charges. Prosecutors filed charges for murder, attempted murder, and arson. The fire at the Tiffany Square Apartments killed Kathleen Payton and her 10-year-old daughter, Jazzy. It displaced people living in 32 units. Our partners at the Denver Gazette report the boys started the fire to get revenge after being kicked out of an apartment. The accused boys are 12 and 14 years old. Prosecutors have not yet said whether they'll move that case to adult court.
An update from police about the Amber Alert we were telling you about yesterday. Police say they're still looking for a man and an infant, but now they're saying the vehicle they're looking for is an Audi station wagon and not a sedan. Police are looking for Anwar Rhodes. They say he is the child's father. They also say he assaulted the infant's mother before taking off with the boy. The two were last seen near 30th and Ivy yesterday before noon. Garner was in a 2006 gray four-door Audi station wagon that has duct tape on the front bumper. The car also with license plate ALWH70. Rhodes is 30, 6 feet tall, about 180 pounds with black hair. That baby's 11 months old. Riot Garner is his name. He weighs 25 pounds, also with brown hair and brown eyes. If you see them or the car or know where they are, you're asked to call 911. 3 suspects are still on the loose. A woman remains in the hospital. This more than a week after a mass shooting on East Colfax. In all, there were 6 people shot. One of them died at the scene.
Denver police say their gunshot detecting technology worked in this case and allowed officers to start heading to the scene before 911 calls came in, and they say the system got them help there faster. 9 News reporter Cole Sullivan is here with more on this technology. We hear about this technology. We often don't think about the price tag, and it's not cheap.
Yeah, it's not cheap at all, Kim. Denver police spent nearly $5 million this year to renew the ShotSpotter contract. It leads to hundreds of alerts officers respond to every month, and it also leads to criticism that it targets black and brown neighborhoods. But Denver police say the shooting last week shows the system's worth. Surveillance footage shows the suspects pull up, get out of their car, and start shooting. There's no sound on this video, but it was the echoing crack of gunfire that triggered the Denver police response.
There was a 911 call that was placed in relation to that specific incident, but officers were actually already on the way because of the alert from ShotSpotter.
Chief Ron Thomas says last week's deadly shooting on East Colfax shows the ShotSpotter technology working. It detects gunshot sounds, triangulates the location, and sends an alert to officers, in this case, before anyone could call 911.
When we do get a 911 call, often that call is not very exact.
DPD has used the technology for 6 years and just renewed the contract for 14 square miles of coverage. It comes with cost, $4.7 million, and controversy over where police deploy it.
While it may be true that that this technology is employed in primarily minority neighborhoods, that's where the violence is occurring, unfortunately. And so I think it's prudent for us to follow the data and put the technology where it's going to be most helpful.
Thomas says there's more benefit than false alarms and dead ends. He says ShotSpotter leads to arrests and evidence collection. In the shooting on Colfax, it meant help could get to the victims faster.
Minutes, seconds count, and so the fact that we were able to be on the way before that call was even placed, I think was helpful.
The chief would not tell us any updates on the investigation into that shooting. He also wouldn't tell us what this device looks like or where exactly all these nodes are because they're worried that some folks may target them or change their behavior as a result of that. The city's contract for this technology extends to 2027 now. The chief says more neighborhoods want it, but it's so expensive. So Kim and Tommy says he wants to focus it on the neighborhoods where the data shows it's most needed.
You see all sides to this, and there are a lot of questions and controversy, but if you're going to help people and potentially save a life, you definitely understand.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily solve a crime, though.
It doesn't solve a crime. It doesn't prevent a crime, but it might be a way to get officers to the scene of a shooting faster. The catch to that, of course, is that not all these calls they get are for shootings. Sometimes their car backfires or things like that sometimes get mistaken, and officers still have to use those resources to go to the scene to check it out because of this.
Well, we'll see as it continues to play out, but this is one case that people are continuing to follow, and we certainly await any updates on the investigation into who actually did the shooting last week.
Yeah, those 3 suspects, and you see that video too, they're still looking for them.
Hard to see. All right, thank you, Cole.
City leaders are trying to improve downtown Denver's image. Today, Mayor Michael Hancock shared his vision to clean up downtown and make it safer. You've probably heard parts of this plan before. The mayor says they're planning to increase police patrols downtown and hire more officers, yet the department has struggled to fill open positions for several years. Denver also wants to add more outreach workers to help people suffering from drug addiction and mental health issues. He also said the city will clean up graffiti and pick up trash downtown.
If we're going to sustain the recovery that has taken place in Denver and return it to a place of growth, it is critical that our downtown's recovery pick up the pace.
The mayor says they'll first focus on the area around the convention center and then expand it to all of downtown.
Well, let's take a look from our camera up above the Horsetooth Reservoir near Fort Collins, and you can see we're off to a beautiful start to the evening as we transition. The sun setting all too rapidly these days, if you ask me, Kathy, but that's the way it goes.
You are in a pool of people that are in agreement.
Yes. I'd like that sun to stick around for another hour or two.
I will say, though, getting up in the morning with you're getting your kids out the door with the light, it's helpful.
Yeah, the trade is a trade, to say the least.
Yeah.
There are winners and losers.
I know.
I still think I'm a loser.
The afternoon is losing, the morning is winning.
It's very strange, and then we're going to start talking about the shortest day of the year in terms of daylight hours coming up, so we kind of have to get there to get to the other side. But let's talk about what a pretty day it was. I mean, down here in Denver and in Boulder, you almost didn't even know that there was a cold front that blew through until you stepped outside. Then you needed that light jacket today because temperatures have come down out of the 60s and in some cases 70s into the 40s. And so we'll take a look at the regional radar and satellite. And we're seeing some lingering snow showers over the northern mountains, but advisories for travel have canceled out. We're still monitoring what was dangerous Hurricane Nicole. And I say dangerous because any amount of wind and rain in an area that was hit by a near Cat 5 Hurricane Ian. Those folks down there still don't have roofs on their houses. They've got tarps. There's beach erosion, property damage. This is not something that you want to see, but it's also historic in nature. And we'll talk about that a little bit more coming up in Maine weather. In the meantime, a beautiful evening. So Tom, just grab onto that daylight. We only have a few more minutes of it left. Look at the snow in the high country. I mean, skiers rejoice. Mother Nature helping out every single ski resort. And these are your current temperatures. We've got 24 in Rock Springs, 30 in Kremling, 48 in Denver, and 56 in Lamar. Winds are racing out of the west, and so any moisture that might come in tonight is going to have a hard time sticking on the ground. But I do have a chance for snow showers here in the metro area between now and midnight. Something we'll cover, the timing of that coming up. And then, you know, on Mondays, usually Tom will ask, right, Kim, when is the weekend forecast? When are you going to detail that? And we'll, of course, break that down as well.
Well, we're kind of ready for it now already, but all right. In about an hour, the Jeffco School Board will meet to decide whether to close 16 schools over the next 2 years. If the board votes to approve the plan, 15 schools would close at the end of this academic year. The last school would close in the summer of 2024. Jeffco's superintendent says declining enrollment is leaving them with no choice. The school board is meeting at 5 tonight. They're going to hear from the public at the meeting before the final vote later in the evening. And so we'll keep you posted on that. We'll be following it. Today, conspiracy theorist Alex Jones and his company were ordered to pay an extra $473 million to the families of the Sandy Hook shooting. And an FBI agent, Jones, called that tragedy a hoax.
So these are new punitive damages adding on to the total. That total judgment against him now a staggering $1.44 billion. Jones again says he'll appeal this case as well, calling the punitive damages award ridiculous. Victims' relatives testified that they've been threatened and harassed for years by people who believe Jones' lies about the shooting. Of course, 20 children and 6 educators were killed in the shooting at Sandy Hook back in 2012. When thousands of kids were taken from Native American reservations, Congress stepped in, but now a new challenge at the Supreme Court could change a program that was meant to protect kids. Our legal expert will join us to explain some of those complications.
Plus, residents in Green Valley Ranch say they're being targeted and bullied with bogus fines that are displacing some of them from their homes.
And today was a huge day on Wall Street, the biggest rally in 2 years on signs that inflation might be slowing. The 3 major indices saw positive spikes. The Nasdaq led the way, up nearly 7.5% by the close. The S&P 500 had its biggest rally since April of 2020, picking up well over 5% of the day. And look at the numbers on the Dow, roaring up by just over 1,200 points today, closing at 33,715 when the trading halted at 2 p.m.